Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Development Control Committee meeting. For the benefit of members of the public watching or participating in the meeting, I would like to explain who everyone is. My name is Councillor Tony Durrant. I'm the chair of this committee. To my right are the councillors who will be making decisions on the applications on this evening's agenda. To my immediate right and left are the officers who will be presenting the applications and providing advice to the committee. The Development Control Committee is a regulatory committee and not a political meeting. The committee will be considering the published papers and examining the evidence brought before us tonight and will make decisions based on planning reasons. We are guided by national and local planning policy and guidance. At the appropriate time, I will invite speakers to contribute to the meeting in the order set out on the update paper. May I ask all speakers, including visiting members, to speak clearly and keep to the points made on the application to material reasons only. No further dialogue between members and committee and speakers will be permitted once questioning is finished. All speakers will be reminded of their permitted speaking time and will be advised when they have 1 minute remaining. May I ask all committee members to avoid repetition and to keep any comments on each application to a maximum of 4 minutes. We have 3 applications this evening and a TPO, we certainly aim to be finished by 9 o'clock. I do understand that planning can be emotive, and I ask everyone to remain polite and professional throughout the meeting. Thank you. Apologies for absence. I haven't received any apologies. I just going to say Councillor Ganesh is going to be a few minutes late. I haven't heard from Councillor McCormick. He's okay. Declarations of interest. Yes, Councillor Grassi. Sorry. Okay, there are no urgent matters. There are 2 sets of minutes to approve, the first one being from the meeting on the 24th of September. I will move to approve those minutes. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Court, all those in favour? Yep. And the second set are from the 8th of October 2025. And again, I will move for approval from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ganesh, I think, got there first. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. For reasons I won't go into, but we are going to move item... Sorry?
I wasn't present at the meeting, so it should have to be someone else.
Ah, okay. Yes. Councillor Court got it then. Sorry, Karen. Okay. Right, we are having a change in the running order. Item 6, which is the determination of TPO, 95 Cavalier Road. We will take that item before the other applications. Okay, if the officer would like to introduce that item.
Thank you, Chair. This item relates to an application for works to trees protected by TPO. The applicant proposes to remove 3 large oak trees on land adjacent to 95 Cavalier Road, citing that the works are required to stop the influence of trees on the soil below the building foundation level and to provide long-term stability. The applicant has stated within their application that in the event of refusal, they do seek to secure compensation for any additional costs incurred. A total of 15 representations, all of which were objections, were received, and as such the application is brought before the committee this evening to determine whether or not to approve or refuse the proposed works. The officer's recommendation is that the application be refused on the grounds of loss of protected trees and insufficient evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no speakers on this one, so any questions from members? I'm quite happy to move from the chair that we... Sorry? Your second, yes. We will move to the officer's recommendation and seconded by Vice Chair. So all those in favour? Thank you.
Thank you. The application is refused in accordance with the main report. Thank you.
Safe journey home. So we will move on to applications for the evening. Thank you. Right, okay, everybody settled? If the officer would like to introduce item 1.
Thank you, Chair. So the first item before you this evening is the Grange Nursing Home, Vine Road, Sherborne St John, which can be found in the agenda paper. The proposal is for the erection of 4 number 3-bedroom dwellings, so 2 pairs of semi-detached dwellings with parking and amenity space. So if I take members' attention to the update paper, the site was subject to the viewings that took place last Friday, and the details of this are printed within the update paper. Namely, the main things that were picked up on site were non-designated heritage assets, the public right-of-way, and trees, which were pointed out to members during the site viewing. So questions were raised in relation to these aspects, as well as landscaping proposals, and these have been clarified within the update paper. So also comments have been received from an additional consultee, so Councillor Minnesbound, an objection, and this is again printed within the update paper. Having reviewed the comments, the matters raised have been covered within the officer's report, so as they've been addressed, no further assessment is required. The full comments are provided within the update paper. And then additionally, 2 conditions have been amended. Condition 9, which was amended to make reference to the proposed site layout plans, and Condition 12, which has been amended to refer to the updated tree protection plan documents. So nothing within the update paper changes the officer's recommendation, so it's recommended for approval, subject to securing a legal agreement in relation to biodiversity net gain, and a number of conditions which are set out within the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the Parish Council has submitted a detailed objection to the scheme, and as you've heard, there's also one from Councillor Bound, our ward councillor, really on the grounds that the site is outside the development boundary of the village, and in the neighbourhood plan, there's a presumption against development outside the boundary. It is a speculative application in our view, and it isn't linked to the retention or the use of the rest home particularly. It seems more likely to open the door to further residential development than achieve the retention of the home. The officer's report states that it's in accordance with the neighbour plan policy SJ1. I mean, it certainly isn't what we envisaged when we put the plan together, as we had a nil housing allocation, and we would expect sites to be within the development boundary. That view seems to be based on the case that it's considered to be previously developed land. In fact, on the site visit, it certainly doesn't give the appearance of a brownfield site or previously developed land. It's an open area surrounded by trees, hedging and landscaping, which hasn't been developed in the past, other than their use for car parking. And it does contribute to the open landscape setting of the Grange, which is a notable building in our conservation area. Also, the adjoining building, which adjoins the access at 6 Vine Road, has been identified as a local heritage asset in the neighbourhood plan conservation area policy and appraisal. One of our concerns is that several trees would be removed to allow the 4 plots to be created, and I think we can see this on the tree protection plan. We're particularly concerned about the 4 large mature trees on the side or eastern boundary, which currently provides screening to this site from views across from the footpath and from Vine Close and across the village. Now this site falls on the ridge line with the lay of the land, so it will be visible in those long views from the public footpath and from Vine Close, and that's one of the things that residents have been concerned about. It does also affect the key view in the neighbourhood plan, which is seen from the footpath which goes down to the Wey Brook, which talks about protecting views to the north and the northeast from the public footpath, and you would be looking up to the north and northeast towards this site, and I guess seeing the back of 4 houses with very little screening.
1 minute left.
Is a concern. We agree with the landscape officer's view that the coverage of buildings and hard landscaping does affect the open field and rural character of this part of the village and the landscape setting of the conservation area. Lastly, we're not convinced that the landscaping will satisfactorily screen the site, particularly the rear boundary, and we are concerned about the loss of large mature trees which took many years to reach that height and can't be easily replaced. We would suggest that if the committee is minded to approve the scheme, that these trees ought to be kept in order, as they fall within a conservation area, which is usually trying to protect trees, and it is quite a large site, so if it's necessary to provide development, it should be possible to retain mature trees.
Could start to wind up, please.
Thank you.
Right, questions from committee members? Councillor Court.
Good evening, thank you for that. I'd just like to pick you up on the one point you made there about previously developed land. In your opinion, it has not been previously developed?
Well, it's part of the grounds of the Grange, and it has been used for car parking, but it certainly hasn't had buildings on it in the past, as far as I'm aware.
That's fine, thank you.
Councillor Ganesh.
So, thank you, Councillor. In your updated comments that you mentioned that the amendment doesn't make any materialistic change, but however some of the statutory consultees has changed their minds with some form of condition. Why do you think that hasn't made any sort of materialistic change?
So on amended plans, is that the question?
Yeah.
Some of the consultees seem to be happier.
Yeah.
I can't answer that question for you, Councillor Ganesh. The details I've seen were about the highways details and the swept path analysis, so I haven't seen any more recent plans. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, thank you very much. If you'd like to retake your seat. And if Mr. Ian Coward would like to come forward to speak in support. The speakers, the mic's on, so once you start speaking, 4 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'm the applicant's agent, and we welcome the recommendation to grant planning permission and what is really a very detailed assessment by your officers after a long period of discussion. Members have obviously seen the site. Okay. Yeah. As members know, that the site is part of the car park to the nursing home, and the monies from the sale of the land will be reinvested back in the business. So clearly the owners are supportive of this. The scheme is in reality a very small one, 4 houses. It's set back some distance from the road and will be read as part of a small enclave of development and therefore adjoining the much larger nursing home. We refer to the planning history for quite a large extension to the back of the nursing home. That was to provide 14 new rooms, and that became ran out of time earlier this year. So what the point there is that the site is able to accommodate quite a lot of additional development. In terms of it being a home for people to live in, it's not isolated, and your officers have set out this in some detail. It's close to what shops and services and facilities there are. On the more positive side, of course, it also makes a small contribution towards sustaining the settlement, with more money being spent locally, and it's just an example of modest and managed change. The delivery of housing is one of the greatest challenges for any local authority. It applies to everyone across the country. I understand there's currently a shortfall in the 5-year supply, and this site will make a contribution. It's not going to change the world. It's not a large contribution because it's a small site, but it's still a valuable one, and it's a proportionate one. Obviously, I've listened to what's been said about the neighbourhood plan, and of course the engagement of the tilted balance, where less weight is given to those policies restricting development and more to the delivery of housing, is something that members obviously need to take into account. The technical issues have been many, but they've all been addressed, and all the statutory consultees are happy. It took some time, it was a couple of years, but we have got there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you could turn your microphone off for a second, please. Thank you. And again, thank you. Questions from members? Yes, Councillor Bounds, sorry.
Good evening. Did I understand you to say that the money that would be recouped from this development would go back into the nursing home?
It will go back into the business, yes, because obviously they're selling the land and then it's reinvested, so yes.
Wasn't quite what I said, into this nursing home.
I can't be that specific, no. He owns a number, but certainly a proportion. That my instruction was a significant likelihood that a decent amount would be spent on this particular site, but I can't categorically say every penny, no.
Okay, anyone else? Right, no other questions. Thank you very much. If you'd like to return to your seat. Right, we'll now take questions to officers. Councillor Gaskell, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. There were some concerns raised about the trees in a conservation area. Could you just provide some information on what the developer will need to do with those trees in order to manage this site?
Yeah, so if you can see on the, so this is the existing tree plan, and you can see, actually I'll just highlight them on tree plan. So it's a group of these trees here. One's in the middle here, and then, sorry, one over there as well. Sorry, I'm trying to do the maths at the same time. Yeah. So there's 12 trees to be removed altogether, and they have been individually set out within the update paper, the types of trees. And then in the tree report, there's also the reasons for those trees. So there's 12 to be removed to facilitate the development. So these are all category C and U trees. Yep.
Councillor Ganesh and Councillor Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. Page 99, you mentioned about the loss of habitats by 90.74, which will be secured by Section 106 agreement. How would that be possible?
So that the point of the legal agreement is to ensure that the biodiversity net gain is achieved and secured. So that is that the question? Sorry.
It's slightly different to the biodiversity net gain, but it's specifically on the loss of habitat units. You've mentioned that it'll be consulted and confirmed through a Section 106 agreement, and how that would be mitigated or how that could be achieved. I'm trying to understand how the loss of habitats in this application could be mitigated through a Section 106 agreement. Page 99, 8.74, paragraph 5.
So the point of Section 106 is to make sure that there is a biodiversity net gain achieved, and then the detail of that will be within the Section 106. If that makes sense.
It's about the trees and the yew trees in particular. I don't know much about yew trees other than some species grow to thousands of years. So in terms of the 4 yew trees referred to in the report, what is the condition and what is their possible, how old are they now and what's the possible remaining lifespan?
I don't have the lifespan, but the Irish yew, which is tree number 6 on the plan, it's a small specimen and it's category C graded. That's not detailed.
Thank you, Councillor. We wouldn't know the anticipated lifespan, but they are Category C trees, as Jess has pointed out. We've also consulted the tree officer, so that's confirmed in the report, who hasn't raised any objection to it as well. But we wouldn't have the detail, I'm afraid, in relation to potential lifespan. I think the key here is that all of those trees are sort of, well, into the site. I take the point that has been raised about the trees at the back of the site being, larger trees and far more prominent. So that it has been taken into account in terms of the overall assessment. And then, as you can see on that plan there, the intention is, so it's the main ones come out of where the actual houses are going, but the intention is for there to be additional plants along that rear boundary to provide some form of mitigation. Appreciate they're not going to be anywhere near the size of the existing trees, but that has all been taken into account as part of that assessment.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Jones.
Yes, I guess it's about the parking area. In fact, I think the report says that we aren't deciding at this stage on EVs, or EV charging points, but making provision so that we can. I think if you look at BS 1899, which is about public things, so more equivalent to the charging point in the car park here, I'm not sure whether there will be charging, but either way, if we've got wheelchair users using those charging points, I think you need more space around them than is shown in the plans here.
Yeah, could you make the question more precise?
The question was, are you satisfied that those charging bays, those disabled bays in the car park are sufficient?
Yes, so it has been reviewed by Hampshire Highways, and there is no objection, so yeah.
And they considered that point of disabled wheelchair users plugging in a charging point.
Councillor Jones, I don't think Hampshire would have provided a specific comment on that detail, just to be really clear on your question, but I think the way the officers have looked at this is in terms of there isn't any sort of formal layout, as I understand, in parking at the moment, so this is seen as a betterment in terms of providing that formality in terms of the overall layout and making it a more efficient car park.
You may.
Yeah, in 8.7, the point 3, it appears to say the scale of development is appropriate, but we've got a situation where there isn't the 10 metres behind these buildings that are required normally. Are we satisfied that that requirement is okay?
Yes, because basically it meets the other principles and it provides an excess of the requirement.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Court.
Thank you, Chair. This one relates to the comment that's been made regards the ground being previously undeveloped, whereas the officers quoted in here as it being developed or previously developed. Now, I'm just wondering what that does in terms of the balance, in terms of the professional officer's judgment on whether this is recommended on that basis, plus into account the other balancing factor is the historic environment team who've basically said that there would be harm. So it's a bit of a fine balance, and so I'm just wondering what that particular point does to the judgment.
So in terms of the balance, within the planning balance, it's detailed a little bit. So weight does have to be given to the conclusion that it's PTL, but also there is weight against the application in terms of the less than substantial harm that's been identified. So that's assessed within section 10 of the report.
Just if I could clarify, the judgment here is based upon about 3 or 4 different factors. The one that's being used here is it's been previously developed ground. Now, I'm just wondering how important that is in terms of, and the fact it's actually outside the settlement boundary, in terms of the balance for the professional officer's judgment.
Councillor Core, I think the key point is, from our assessment, it is previously developed land. It is part of the overall curtilage of the main building. It does have existing hard standing. It's been used as a car park. So for all those reasons, in terms of the MPPF definition, it is previously developed land. On that basis, our assessment is, alongside the location, the appropriate scale, etc., that in our view that it is compliant with policy SS6 and therefore by default compliant with the neighbourhood plan policies, although I appreciate the concerns raised by the parish council. On that basis, it's considered to be in accordance with those policies. The overall planning balance then does have to weigh everything, positive and negative, and it does acknowledge those less substantial harm has been set out, but the overriding point is that in our view it does comply with policy SS6 of the local plan.
Thank you, that's fine.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Jones.
Yeah. In terms of the waste bins, was the requirement to put the position for those, which I understand is out on the road, was that assessment made before the food bins came into use? I guess there's also the concern that with new housing there could be a lot of packaging as well around here. Is it really safe to have that on the side of the road?
So the comments from the waste team were that they ideally wanted waste to be directly next to the road, but it's actually set back slightly with a walkway to the road, so here. But yes, previous waste comments did include food waste.
I don't know if you can see the cursor there, Councillor Jones, that, as I understand it, is at the back of that sort of orange path. So I don't know if Nicky, if you could move the cursor.
Yes, I see the cursor. It wasn't my reading of the report, but if that's correct, that.
Councillor Ganesh, you have one?
So that's picking up on Councillor Jones' question about the waste. So the final comment is it should be on Vine Road. So how lengthy is that from the houses to the Vine Road for 4 houses to bring those bins or drag those bins? How lengthy? How far is that? It's 4 houses we left to drag.
Yeah. So it is 20 metres, and then there was also an informative put on just in relation to the bin collection point and how it's set back from the highway location.
Okay, thank you. Right, we will move to debate. Anyone wish to start? Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Chair. It was quite an interesting site visit we had on Friday, and I think really it was a site that probably did need to be viewed by members of the committee. The question of previously developed land, well, it was quite noticeable that it was a car park, and if that comes within the provisions of previously developed land, then that's, as far as I'm concerned, is what it was. The houses themselves are going to be a little bit cramped, I feel, on that site, with very little garden, but they can be accommodated. And it would seem that the provisions of SS6A previously developed land are fulfilled, although I suppose that policy is in abeyance now because they're out of date. So we're coming into the NPPF territory, which presumes on development. And I personally, at this stage, I can't see any reason why these houses shouldn't be approved. I'm waiting to hear what my fellow committee members have got to say. I mean, the report acknowledges that there's less than substantial harm to the conservation area. Less than substantial harm is identified in the landscape, but also goes on to say that the benefits outweigh these the sort of downside. In my mind, that is so, but I don't want to propose approval at this stage. I want to hear what other people have got to say.
Okay, anyone else?
Thank you, Chair. I personally, I'm not comfortable with the large amount of trees that we're losing, but I do think it fits on the site, and I don't really think there are any valid planning reasons to refuse it, providing we can secure the biodiversity net gain that we need through the conditions and the agreement. I don't see a reason to refuse it. Unfortunately, it's unfortunate to lose that many trees, and it's not something that I'm comfortable with, but I can't see a valid planning reason for refusal.
Is that a proposal at this stage?
I will wait to hear what Councillor Ganesh has to say, but I'm quite happy to propose the approval once we've heard other people speak.
Councillor Ganesh.
Thank you, Chair. The concerns I have is the consultees' responses previously, which all pretty much like from biodiversity to trees to waste authority to landscape to the parish council that's been objected. However, some of them had slight change of mind with some form of conditions. As some council, as previously mentioned, we'll be losing the amount of trees that I don't know if we do outweigh the benefits of it. And some of the comments in the report itself about the biodiversity net gain, I am not convinced by saying that the losing the habitat can be gained through hedge grow units and have biodiversity net gain. That's something I don't know if I probably might need a bit of the technical explanation around that because I'm not convinced on the on that 8.74 paragraph. And the other point around the heritage asset. So what is less significant or what is not harmful in terms of the impact on the heritage assets? So I'm not convinced that this could probably outweigh the benefits that could bring in this application.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more? Councillor Joe?
Yes, I probably should have asked this question earlier, but I'll just, I am concerned that there was a large shipping container in the bay where the swept paths for large vehicles are. I'm slightly concerned that we haven't seen all the necessary space. Maybe there's an extension plan for this which will remove the need for that shipping container, but I am rather concerned that it's a very limited space for vehicles to manoeuvre once this road, the road is separated, because I believe it was mentioned somewhere, possibly in the report or on the site, that at the moment people use it as a one-way through road, so there isn't the need to turn large vehicles in there.
Okay, well, we have what's presented to us, so point taken, but we have what we have. Anyone else? Sorry? Yeah. Councillor Hussey, you wanted to say something?
I'm sitting on the fence at present. I was hoping for more involvement by members. Looking at the report and trying to look at the balance of the positive of 4 houses, my eyes have been drawn to being on the eastern part of the conservation area in generally large plots. And the landscape officer says, intensifying the built character of the local area, creating a suburban effect. And then on design, the plot sizes are nevertheless limited, though it is considered reasonable and necessary to restrict permitted development rights. And it goes on to say there is harm associated through the erection of new dwellings affecting the visual amenity of the area, qualified by saying, however, this harm is considered moderate. So they're the negatives I've picked up, and I'm still sitting on the fence. I'm hoping that maybe some of the members will.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just clarify one point raised by Councillor Ganesh, just in terms of biodiversity net gain? Totally understand the point being raised and the concern about whether it can or cannot be met. Because this is subject to biodiversity net gain mandatory requirements, there's the mandated condition that's put on that will effectively secure a biodiversity gain plan. What the report is effectively saying is that there is a deficit recognised, but that can be made up via the details to be submitted by the biodiversity net gain plan, and that would be secured by 106. So it's not a situation where there's any doubt, because that could be in any form. The way that works is that could be some additional on-site provision, it could be off-site credits, it could be additional units. So that will be met, and there is a mechanism to secure that. It's just that there isn't the detail in the application right now, and that is very normal under that new regime into the mandatory requirements. In terms of the points around sort of positives and negatives, which again I entirely understand, I think really it comes back down to, if I can draw members' attention to paragraph 10.2. So this is the point where effectively the assessment is that it's on previously developed land, it does comply with policy SS6 of the local plan, albeit that is considered to be out of date because of the lack of 5-year supply. But that in itself, the fact that it still complies with development plan policies is a positive, as is the fact that it's on previously developed land. That is something that is weighed in the NPPF positively as well. So those factors do need to be taken into account. That the negatives, if you like, or some of the some of the harms have been identified and they've been addressed in the report, and it ultimately comes down to that weighting, if you like, of all the different factors. Because of those points around previously developed land, etc., and the compliance with those policies, the overall assessment is that it is acceptable in planning terms. Entirely understand there could be a debate about whether they should be in bigger plots or not. I guess the ultimate impact of that is if you did that, it would then bring them further forward, it might make them more visually prominent. So I think the overall assessment has been that this is a reasonable proposition in terms of the overall planning assessment. And then the test is whether the harms would be significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. So you've got that tilted balance to consider as well. So you'd have to be in a mindset where those harms are so significant that they outweigh those benefits as listed. And that's not the point that we've got to in terms of the assessment. The officer assessment is that it's the other way around. Hopefully that helps the committee.
Thank you. Councillor Court, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to go back on to the point made by the officer there about previously developed ground, because that is significant in this discussion. And I ask that point specifically because the parish council have the view it isn't, but I do take the point of other members who made the point it's a car park, so of course. I think besides that, the other big issue for me is the loss of trees. These are significant in the area, and at the moment we know nothing of their age or their condition, so that's important. And I do have to say I'm wondering whether it would have been possible to actually avoid taking quite so many trees, because it's quite a large-scale destruction of the trees there. So there's that aspect. And then the other aspect we've talked about is the size of the properties here, but the area needs smaller houses. You have a lot. There's a comment in the report here about the number of smaller houses being necessary to feed that part of the market. So I don't have a problem with the size of houses that are proposed or the size of gardens. So really, for me, the point really is about the amount of trees to be brought down more than anything else. And also, there is a comment made in there about wildlife, dormouse, and I think one of the owls. So I'm considering they'd probably take advantage of the trees and the various things around there. So, the actual basic fact, yes, I agree in terms of development, but on the other side, I just do wonder if it would have been possible to perhaps have planned this to avoid having quite so many trees brought down. So that's my point.
Thank you, Councillor Court. I again understand the point. I think it's one of those situations where it's deciding, the application is before us, not an alternative. That is the proposal that's before us after various iterations, and as you can see from the report, it did include additional information. The tree officer originally objected and then sought more information in terms of that tree information that came in. That included the classifications of the status of the trees, if you like. So whilst they are large, certainly the four, I think it's four across the back of the site, they are all sort of lesser category trees, so there isn't an objection from the council's tree officer on that loss.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ganesh, then Councillor Round.
Can I just quickly go back to Mike about the biodiversity net gains and the loss of habitats? So one of the habitats mentioned was the great crested newts, which is a protected species around where the application is. So, and you mentioned about it can be mitigated through a biodiversity net gain, and I'm still struggling to understand how that can be achieved through a Section 106 agreement, the loss of habitats in or around the application. Thank you.
So the great crested newts would be separate from the biodiversity net gain, so that has been offset by the district licence scheme. So
the question goes back to the loss of or the harm to those protected species, how that could be mitigated.
Wandering off on me.
Yep, so that was assessed by the biodiversity team, and it's at paragraph 8.76, so there was low suitability for protected species on site.
The officers have responded now on biodiversity, to be honest. Councillor Bound, you wanted to say something?
I'm prepared to move the recommendation of Chair.
One. That's the lot, isn't it? That's everybody.
Thank you, Chair. So to confirm, that application has been approved subject to the Section 106, the signing of the Section 106, which will secure biodiversity net gain. Thank you.
Thank you. We're all ready to move.
Sorry, and subject to the conditions and informatives within the agenda and the update paper. Thank you.
Okay. Ready to go to 2? Yeah, we'll move to item 2. If the officer would like to introduce.
Thank you, Chairman. The second item before you this evening is for a site land west of Silchester Road in Little London, and the application is seeking full planning permission for the creation of a farm track, which is to connect from an existing access onto the agricultural land and through the agricultural land to its rear, where there is no other access at present. If I take members' attention to the viewing panel, this site was viewed last week, so there is an update on there, along with some further comments in response to additional queries raised by a ward member. And as a consequence, condition 3 has been reworded to add in the reference to the aggregate to be used on site should be virgin type 1 aggregate. I also have a verbal update for you, and I would draw members' attention to paragraph 3.1 on page 127. And this states that the application site forms part of a 0.22 hectare agricultural unit. 0.22 hectares is actually the size of the application site. The overall unit is 4.8 hectares. And the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have one speaker, I think. We have 2 speakers down in support. We have Ian Lassiter and Sarah O'Farrell. If you'd like to take seats, you will have 4 minutes between you. I will give a call when there is 1 minute left, and the moment you press the button on the right, your 4 minutes starts ticking. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. You may be pleased to hear that we're not proposing to make a speech, but we're quite happy to answer any questions. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. I think that's the briefest we've had. So, members, any questions? Councillor Jones?
Yeah, in the rewording of this, whatever it is, 3 in the update report, I hadn't realised when we viewed the site that it was going to be 2 strips with grass in between. That makes me slightly nervous about the drain that it goes over. Can you just explain how it will work, that the vehicles won't slide off those 2 strips either side and end up? I know it supports 50 tonnes, so I'm not worried it'll collapse, but just the ease of manoeuvring.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I think in practice that manhole cover that you saw, the 55-tonne one, will be in the centre, which will be grassed. The 2 strips that were laid out were quite approximate, We couldn't really do it that accurately at short notice. So it will be a grass strip. The whole strip will be, the whole 3 metres will be laid to type 1, but in use, the two wheel tracks will remain type 1, but the middle will grass over in no time at all.
Thank you. Councillor Bound.
Good evening. I was interested to know, when you bought the holding, the farm holding, did you have access from New Road?
We did, yes. Oh, do you
Sorry, no, carry on.
Oh, originally we did, yes, but it's not actually, it had a planning application for a bungalow that was gone separated, so I have no access whatsoever, apart from the one that I have left, which I use, I used to jiggle between the two depending on the weather, and that, but now I have no other access, so there's, unfortunately I have to go through the process of making sure I get it right, that's why I'm here today really, to get, yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Well, thank you very much. If you'd like to retake your seats. We have questions for officers. Any questions for officers? Councillor Court.
Chair, there's a comment goes back to the landscape officer, and I don't know whether that's been clarified as yet. The objection there, which has been raised on the basis that the site is currently free from vehicular routes. So how is this balanced in the judgment?
So at the moment, as members would have noted from the site photos, there is no other access route across the land itself. The landscape officer has raised concerns about an access going into this route, but however, we're looking at that public domain, what is the public harm from that development. Where we have site screening on all the sides, it's not considered to be so demonstrably harmful to the character of the area as to warrant refusal. So we're taking those landscape comments in hand, but actually looking at that wider context as well.
Supplementary?
Just a supplementary. And this is defined as a track, is it? In terms of highways, and not a road.
I would refer you to the description of the application as being a farm track.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay. Thank you. We will move to debate. Your mic's on, Councillor Cook. Anyone wish to speak?
Again, attended the site visit on Friday, and we walked the path of the track which had been laid out for us, and up as far as a gate which gave us access to another field, and we noted the drain that Councillor Jones has pointed out, and we noticed the relevance of the brook, which was actually the other side of quite a lot of existing hedging there. And I believe there is going to be more tree planting down the edge of the proposed track, which would give a bit more screening as well. So I have no trouble with this application. Personally, I will move the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? No. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McCormick, first hand up. All those in favour? Unanimous.
Thank you, Chairman. That application has been resolved for permission, subject to the conditions within the agenda and the amended condition on the update paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All set to go on 3? Yeah. Okay, we will now move to item 3, if the officer would like to introduce the application.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for a technical details consent following the grant of permission in principle for land north of Slade Hill. And the technical details consent refers to the erection of 2 detached dwellings, which again is in accordance with that permission in principle. If I take members' attention to the update paper, we did receive an additional representation raising queries regarding the biodiversity net gain metric. Subsequent to that, a revised metric was submitted and has been subject to further consultation with the biodiversity officer, and that has been deemed satisfactory. If I also take members' attention to page 193 of your agenda, and this illustrates the garage plans for plot 1. The references to west, east, north and south on your page are actually incorrect. So where it says west elevation, that should be south. Where it says east elevation, that should be north. Where it says north elevation, that should be west. And the south elevation should be east. And the correct terms are on the visualiser as well, just for clarification. This application has been recommended for approval, again subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement to secure the biodiversity net gain, which is to occur on land to the rear of the site. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We have two speakers. Speaking in objection is Mr. Evely. If you would like to come forward, take a seat on your right-hand side. When you press the right-hand button, you will have 4 minutes. No, back one row, sorry. There you go, yep. When you press the red button and start speaking, you have 4 minutes. I will give you a shout at 1 minute to go. Thank you.
The applicant needs a 10% biodiversity gain to have this technical development consent approved and to be allowed to build in the countryside. This gain is calculated using a DEFRA spreadsheet called an SBM metric. The applicant's claimed 61.87% habitat gain has been achieved by baselining other neutral grassland on-site, which is where the two building plots are, and off-site, which is where the traded enhanced land is to be, as poor. This is as opposed to the alternative drop-down options on the spreadsheet of fairly poor, moderate, fairly good, and good. The applicant's habitat condition assessment shows the grassland conditions are caused by the presence of horses. Page 55 states, horse grazed in the southern part and varied height in the northern off-site land. The report shows on page 26 that by enhancements on-site and off-site, with measures including grass seed, the required habitat net gain can be achieved. However, this is entirely dependent on the baseline scores. As these are given as the lowest condition of poor grass, it's easier to show a gain. Right now, there is white electrical fencing tape to stop the horses eating grass on the two building plot sites. I've taken dated photos. They do not look like the photos in the applicant's Appendix E taken in May 24. As it is now, the knee-high grass could pass the page 55 and page 56 criteria B, C, E and F, making it moderate, and even criteria A, making it good. I checked, and altering the other neutral grassland rating from poor to fairly poor on the BNG spreadsheet produces a lower outcome in the form of an overall habitat loss of 0.04 units, so minus 1.27%. However, rating it as moderate produces a minus 1.45 units, so a massive habitat loss of 37.56%. Moreover, on page 5, their own assessment states the site is considered to provide good opportunities for wildlife and is in an optimal location for biodiversity. I can only repeat those words, optimal location for biodiversity. The applicant seeks to meet the required 10% gain by trading on land off-site. On page 27, it says this other land will be managed in perpetuity by the appointed management company. It is difficult to take this seriously. In theory, this traded enhanced land can't be built on, but significantly, it's not the whole field. The rest of the field is not part of the application, so leaving a further PIP opportunity. If the on-site and off-site grassland had been described as any of the better conditions, then more of the remaining field would need to be traded to hit the 10% target. The vested interest in the poor grass rating is clear. The applicant's ecological appraisal found no snakes. Their desktop survey doesn't list them on page 15 under records for protected and vulnerable species of interest. It shows the nearest reptile sighting for a slow worm 480 metres away. However, on Monday the 16th of June this year, a representative of the Oxfordshire Wildlife Rescue Charity identified a live female grass snake approximately 140 metres from the nearest point of the site. The shed skin has been retained as proof. These are protected under Schedule 5 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act. This technical details consent application lacks the real attention to detail and care required to give adequate biodiversity and habitat assurances. It is not at all clear there is no overriding demonstrable harm. I therefore respectfully ask the committee to consider its failings against the wonderful news of the presence of grass snakes and to withhold consent.
Thank you very much. If you'd like to stay seated for questions. Councillors, any questions? No? No questions. Thank you very much for your input. If you'd like to return to your seat. We now have speaker in support, Mr. Mark Pettit. If you would like to take the seat, when you press the right-hand button, you have 4 minutes, and I will give you a 1-minute warning.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Mark Pettit. I prepared and submitted this planning application on behalf of the applicant. The application is recommended for approval, and we wholeheartedly support this recommendation. The principle of 2 new houses on the site in this location has already been established following an appeal decision back in November 23. The inspector recognised that the proposed development would make a small but positive contribution to the council's housing land supply position and would deliver socio-economic benefits. The inspector also noted that the site was well related to the existing village and that existing services and facilities were within moderate walking and cycling distance. The inspector concluded that the benefits of providing 2 additional new dwellings would significantly and demonstrably outweigh any adverse impacts. This is still the case. In fact, there is an even greater need to bring housing forward in the borough following the changes to the National Planning Policy Framework last December. The Council's housing land supply position is much worse than when the previous appeal was determined. At just 2.94 years, the shortfall is a significant one. And members will no doubt remember granting planning permission for a 2-storey property at Slade Hill Cottage directly opposite this site back in June, outside the settlement boundary. In terms of the design of the 2 properties, we wanted to put something here that respects the character and appearance of the area, makes a positive contribution to the national landscape and stands the test of time. 2 good-sized properties, 2 storeys, set in generously sized plots are not uncommon in this part of the village, and the proposed dwellings are consistent with this. The houses have been set back from the public highway, so they don't stand prominently in the street scene, and are screened in part by the existing roadside hedge and new native tree planting. A high-quality palette of traditional materials will be used, which will allow the houses to blend in with the fabric of the local area. These will include brick, timber cladding and plain clay tiles. There are no technical reasons why this application should not be approved. The landscape team, Hampshire County Council Highways, your biodiversity officer and environmental health have all raised no objection to these proposals. The applicant has no objection to the conditions that have been suggested by the officer. These will secure, amongst other things, appropriate biodiversity net gain, hard and soft landscaping, tree protection, materials and water efficiency. So in summary, the site is considered to be an appropriate location for 2 new dwellings, as confirmed already by the previous appeal inspector. Every effort has been made to ensure that the new houses are sensitively designed and will make a positive contribution to Wootton Hill. We agree with the officer that residential properties in the surrounding area vary in terms of their character, appearance and scale.
You have 1 minute.
Thank you. As such, 2 individually designed houses, such as this, will make a positive contribution in this respect, and this can be achieved without compromising the verdant setting of the village or the spacious layout of nearby housing. The amenity of neighbouring residents will not be unduly compromised, and the new dwellings will sit comfortably in their respective plots and be well screened by existing and proposed tree and hedgerow planting, We therefore respectfully request that technical detailed consent be granted in line with your officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you'd like to stay seated, if there's any questions. Any questions from members? No questions. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, Councillor McCormick.
Yeah, I was just looking at the previous PIP, which came in front of this committee in October 2022 and was overturned at appeal. So I had a question on that. To what extent does planning precedent tie our hands in this case? I mean, we had reasons for refusal, overturned at appeal.
Sorry, Councillor McCormick, that's a question for officers, yeah?
Yeah. Okay.
Was his question?
I'll reserve it for questions.
No,
for officers then.
that was a question for speakers.
Right. Okay.
So.
Okay.
So no
I'll
questions.
reserve that for questions for officers.
Yeah, you were just slightly ahead of the buzzer.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, thank you. If you to return to your seat, now we do questions for two officers. Councillor McCormick.
Yeah. I think the committee was unhappy with this development in principle. There's often been questions about PIPs. If we refuse in principle and then it gets improved in principle, to what extent, what are we looking at in terms of refusing this? I mean, can we refuse it on, biodiversity reasons, things like that? Because I would have thought that would have been something that would have been considered in the PIP. Are we just looking at the size and design of the buildings? To what extent are our hands tied on this now?
So if I refer members to the agenda report, so paragraph 8.2, so that sets out what the permission in principle considers. We do have that permission in principle, that remains in place. It is extant, so we do have to have regard to it. It is reiterated in the report that the TDC stage does not provide the opportunity to revisit that principle of development. If you then go to paragraph 8.4, it just sets out what technical details consent involves. So it's basically filling in the gaps of all that knowledge that we didn't have at that permission at the principle stage. So it's looking at obviously all the other aspects that we didn't have, where we have now considered the ecology, the trees, the landscaping, the detailed design of the houses, the layout, the access. I hope that assists there, but as I say, I would just reiterate that that principle has been established for the development in this location.
Thank you. Supplementary, Councillor McCormick? No?
No, I don't have one, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Questions? Councillor Freeman and then Councillor Ganesh.
Thank you, Chair. The objector was talking about grass snakes being discovered in the area. How much consideration do we need to give that? Is that something new? Is that new information that's come up, or were we aware of the possibility of a presence of grass snakes?
So the presence of grass snakes, I think, was raised in the representations to the application, so we would have had awareness of that and to be able to consider that within the context of the application. The application has also been subject to consultation with your biodiversity officers, and whilst they have acknowledged the potential of the site to host protected species, they've also acknowledged that the supporting information to the application has made suitable measures or set out suitable measures to avoid harm to those species themselves. That is also secured within condition 13 before you to make sure that the development is carried out in accordance with those avoidance measures.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ganesh.
I think my question is very similar to Councillor Freeman's. So this application is located within the green IRS for great crested newts, and it's also site very low risk for the newt. So which I would assume that there is a valid reason for that to be initially or allocated or cited as a green IRS for great crested newts. But how significant is that for us to consider that sites being designated as a protected species zone, but we class that as the low risk of great crested newts.
So if I refer members to the agenda, page 172, so that sets out the assessment in relation to newts. It confirms that the application site is located within that green RRZ, which is that lowest level. It's presenting a low risk of great crested newts being found on site. And again, that has also been subject to consultation with the nature space, who considered the impacts upon newts. So we have no objection from them either.
Anyone else? Councillor Hussey.
I want to refer to the information we've just received this evening from an objector on the biodiversity. An awful lot of data there and in detail, and it blew my mind a little bit. I'm not certain I could take it all in. But the one point I would like to raise is, when you take measurements from a baseline, if you disagree where the baseline is to start with, you can end up with a different result. Has the level of information we received tonight been vetted and checked with the biodiversity officer, or has this gone into more detail than the biodiversity officer has had opportunity to examine?
I believe the concerns raised to the application and the biodiversity metric have been raised during the course of the application. We obviously, as I indicated on the update paper, we had received further comments about the biodiversity metric. Again, we have received an updated biodiversity metric that has been subject to a second consultation or second views with your biodiversity officers, who are obviously the experts in that field and assessing that metric. And they have maintained that they don't have an objection to the application.
Thank you. Any more questions? No? We can move to debate. Andy, your mic's on. Sorry. Move to debate. Anybody wish to kick off? Councillor Ganesh.
Yeah, I think this is the second application today. I'm struggling to see how a harm to some form of protected species or habitats can be mitigated through biodiversity net gain by having some form of arrangements elsewhere. So this is something I'm struggling to support again today.
Sorry.
So this is, I'm struggling to support this application, having read the report, and how do we mitigate the loss of habitats by having a biodiversity net gain elsewhere. Thank you.
Do you want to come back on that? No? Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor McCormick.
Yeah, I'm struggling with this one. Because it's a TDP after a PIP, I managed to call up the papers on the phone and look at the decision, and the decision was about impacts on the national landscape. I'm uncertain if biodiversity was considered by the committee at the time. It sounds to me more like a principle of development, because whatever you develop on the land is going to have an impact on the habitat that's going to be at least partially destroyed. But I feel very strongly that if we've got restricted species or endangered species, we shouldn't be allowing something to be built on their habitat. What I don't know, and I would like to be able to make a more informed decision on this, is whether grass snakes are a red listed species or not. We've been told that it's a green designation for great crested newts. If it was red, then we'd have the derogation test. We could have refused permission in principle on that at the time. And I'm just very uncomfortable with the fact that, it's a halfway house. We've already had the planning inspector approve this development in principle, but the information we're considering, was that available at the time? That kind of raises questions in my mind as to whether we should be, and we can't revisit that decision. I don't know, is there a statute of limitations on a judicial review for a decision that we think is unsound? I'm really uncomfortable with the idea of building on this and wiping out endangered species.
Thank you, Councillor McCormack. Just to clarify, I suppose, because I appreciate the sequence of the permission in principle. I think in terms of the permission in principle, I think if locationally there was an overriding constraint from a biodiversity point of view that made the principle unacceptable, then there is some precedent that could be taken into account. But that wasn't the case, and permission in principle was granted. So that is the kind of starting point, I guess, which is that in principle this site can be developed. To clarify, the bit that is before you in terms of the current application, the technical details consent, is I suppose the detail of then what would happen in terms of the biodiversity. And you've obviously heard some information tonight. You've heard the responses in terms of the fact the biodiversity officer, etc., has looked at it. If you consider that you don't have enough information before you regarding that, then clearly it is before the committee to defer the item, seeking more information in relation to the issues raised this evening, including the kind of nature of the grassland, etc. The point around, just to clarify there, in terms of the great crested newts, that is under the green zone, is something defined by the council's operation of the district licence. So that is how that comes about. That is slightly distinct from the issues raised in the objections that have been raised this evening. So they're both biodiversity related clearly, but they are two distinct issues.
Okay, anyone else? No? Sorry? Do you wish to propose to defer for more information?
Happy to propose with more technical details around biodiversity net gain or the officer presence around the questions that members got tonight.
Okay. So do we have a seconder for deferral? Councillor Freeman, I think, beat the crowd. All those in favour of deferral? Do we need against? Yeah. All those against?
So that application has been deferred for more information relating to protected species such as slowworms, and also further information on the baseline data that informed the biodiversity metric. Thank you.
There being no, Andy, just so you're aware, we dealt with item 6 ahead of schedule. So there being no reasons to exclude the press, public, there are no confidential items. I declare the meeting closed at 11 minutes to 8. Thank you very much. But if people don't want their paperwork, could you? Sorry.
So where do we stop?
What?
Where do we stop? In terms of knowing that there's a potential species.